You're listening to Out of Line with Caroline Lee, exploring offline realities with online personalities. William Matthews is an LA-based musician who rose to fame through his songwriting in the Christian and gospel genres. William is one of the only guests I've spoken with whose fan base grew outside of social media, and so his following is quite equal across multiple channels. William is a producer, coach, and also podcaster of his own show, Culture Shock. Little humble brag here, William is also one of my dear friends, so we got to sit down face to face and record this chat in my home. Okay, here we go. You ready? Do you need another sec?
I'm ready.
I know, right?
Get that phlegm out. There's a great little thing my friend Major is a vocal producer told me. He's like, meow, like that like something in it that does that. And then when you cough, instead of just coughing, they're doing that actually gets it out, and it doesn't scratch your vocals because coughing scratches your vocals.
Totally,
but
it
doing
does.
Like the it gets it out instantly without.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that the Major that I saw at Hotel Cafe?
Yes, that
Major. I love him.
He's a special man. He's one of those unicorns in life. You're like,
yes.
You are just an odd duck, but it's why you do what you do. And now he's like traveling all over the world. He's major now. Literally.
Oh, is he? Major?
He charted on he got a song charted on Billboard R&B pretty
Whoa.
high. Yeah. He's like a hit single on Billboard. And so now he's like touring, doing all these like big events. Like, you know, his song like blew up. So now he's major now, even since we saw him at Hotel Cafe.
Wow. Cool,
he's a legit
cool.
R&B celebrity now.
Dang, girl. Wow,
dream.
Major. And then we'll listen to the way he wants us to use our vocal cords.
Yeah, we will.
He knows what's up.
It's good. I got to make sure I'll play you his song later. It's beautiful. It's the wedding song of the century, like everyone.
Really?
Oh, God, yeah.
Have I heard it then?
It's called Why I Love You. It's one of the most beautiful songs I think I've heard. Like, and I think it got popular because a lot of people, it's such a good, there's not a lot of slow relationship songs that are beautiful and meaningful. And he was able to write one. And it just like, so now it's like everyone sings it at the wedding. It's like, I'm like, you wrote a wedding classic, dude. If you never have another hit song, this song is going to like make you money forever. People are going to be playing this at their weddings 20 years from now.
Damn.
Yeah.
All right. I got to listen. I'm going to listen. Maybe I'll just splice it in right here.
Yeah. Do it. This is why I love you. It's the chorus. Major. We love you.
Oh, well, I love you. And I'm so glad you're here today. It's so fun to get to... I've been recording so many over Skype that it's so great to just be like looking you in the eye and getting to sip coffee with you and be in our homeland of LA.
Los Angeles.
Oh, y'all. So, all right. So I've known you for what, 2 years?
Maybe a little over 2 years.
Yeah. And in that time, I've gotten to know you through a lot of same circle friend stuff, which is awesome. But tell me something I don't know.
Tell you something you don't know. Well, something you don't know that I don't talk a lot about is I am a major fan of reality shows. And not just, like they're good reality shows and then they're bad reality shows. I kind of like the bad reality shows.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and partially like the more ratchet the better. With some of the reality shows, like now there is such a thing as being too ratchet. Like I don't go love and hip hop ratchet because I will watch sometimes because, but I have morals. But a good safe ratchet for me though is the Real Housewives of Atlanta. I have been faithfully watching that show since probably season 2, and it's now entering season 10. And yeah. I can't even tell you why. There's something about grown black women acting a fool and being outlandish and dramatic that just warms my soul. And actually, maybe it makes me feel normal. I don't know. Or it makes me feel like my life is boring compared to their, I don't know. It's grand. It's silly. It's too much. It's legitimately too much, especially if you live in Atlanta, right? It's just, the shoes, the clothes, the lifestyles, the fights, the parties. Like I don't know. I live in LA and I still feel like that life is too much. But
wow, I was definitely that. I didn't think I would learn that about you today, and I can't say I've even ever seen an episode myself. So
you have to watch it because okay. So I started watching the show because what drew me to it instantly was the one of the main characters came on season 2 is Candy Burris, who's a songwriter. She was a famous songwriter. She wrote TLC's No Scrubs. She was in the band Escape in the 90s. And so she had this run where she was writing NSYNC songs. I think they wrote like Just Gonna Be Me, her and her writing partner. They had Mariah Carey hits. Like, so I remember her from the 90s, like, oh, that's that girl from that group Escape. And then she was like a big songwriter with this producer Shakespeare. And they had a moment in like, in history where they were writing all these big #1 Billboard songs. So I remember changing the channel. I'm like, oh wait, that's Candy. Wait, what is this show? Housewives of Atlanta. And then she was on this show and she was producing a terrible artist on the show named Kim Zolciak, who became a big celebrity off of that show. But the girl couldn't sing. And so they had this song like Tardy for the Party that ended up doing like really well. But then like Kim suits Candy over the song. So for me being like, as a songwriter, I was just beginning in the industry. I started watching the show and this kind of drama played out. And I was like, oh, this feels just like my life actually a little bit. Because publishing fights and splits and who gets what. So that's kind of how I started watching the show. And then ultimately, all the shade and the reads and the, people telling each other off. It was just the finest tell-offs I've ever seen in my life. And that's kind of what stuck me around to the show.
Wow. Okay. That makes sense because I was going to say why Housewives and why Atlanta, but now that makes total sense.
And I have a lot of family in Atlanta. I've never lived there, but it kind of gives me, even though it's very outlandish, it gives me a little bit of a picture of Atlanta because some people on the show, to me, like a Candy represents Atlanta, born and raised. Like one of my cousins went to school with all of them, like Candy from Escape, Tiny, Ludacris, Outkast, Monica. They all like went to school together, and my cousin like went to the same like performing arts high school that they all like went to, and so you have people like that are very grounded in the city, but then you have other people on the show who are just terrible and big as life personalities, and so it's kind of rootsy, but it's still pretty like outlandish, which I love the juxtaposition of both. So like Nene Leakes is probably one of the top characters on the show. She's an actual person, I should say that, and she can tell anyone off. Like she has this, it's kind of the confidence of being able to say what's on your mind and actually just say it. I think that's what draws me to the show. And especially, I started watching it and it was a season of life when I didn't feel like I had a voice. I noticed that too. That kind of intersected for me was this thing of like, here are these people that have a voice that just say whatever they want to say.
You can say fuck on my show. It's
I
fine.
can. You
can say the fuck word.
Should I say it? Should I not say it? I've already said it on the Liturgist podcast.
You can say it here.
I could say it here. These people who don't give a fuck.
Oh, you did it.
I whispered it.
Shake it off.
I just shake it off. And they don't care. And they're saying how they feel about whatever they feel about. And there was something to me that called to me. Because I was like, oh, you're not speaking up enough in your life. You're not saying enough. You're not. And even if that's outlandish or they're doing it in ways that are over the top, they're still saying it. Why aren't you speaking? Why aren't you saying how you really feel?
Wow.
So there was something like a subtle confidence that I think I got from watching those shows of like being in these social scenarios and someone's being fake. And then normally I just, whatever. You die back or pull back. And now I'm like, no, that's what it is. And I just kind of don't feel afraid to call it out anymore.
Wow.
That might be too deep.
No, I love it.
For Housewives of Atlanta, but
no. Hey, it's real life. And have you ever met any of them in real life?
No.
Have you ever interacted on the social meds?
No, I've wanted to. Okay, so there's a couple other shows that I've watched too, and I have had one or two interactions. Another reality show I love is Braxton Family Values. Totally ridiculous. I know. Toni Braxton and all of her sisters have a reality show. It's been on for like 5 seasons, and it's an incredible show. And one of the artists on the show is like one of my favorite R&B artists, Tamar Braxton, her sister. Obviously, we love Toni Braxton too, but Tamar's released a number of records since the show came out, and like I've like tweeted her, and she's like retweeted stuff, and so that was like, oh shit, Tamar Braxton like retweeted me. Oh my, like that was a high that day. I think I'll never forget it. I think I have it screenshotted. But I love that show, as well as T.I. and Tiny's show, Family Hustle. Why do I love the ratchet show? I told you, I love like the the semi-ratchet shows.
So you said before that there's too ratchet.
There is. Love and Hip Hop is too ratchet. All of them. New York, Atlanta, Hollywood. I've like dabbled in each. And Cardi B, who's, blowing up right now with Bodak Yellow, she came out of Love and Hip Hop New York. But I didn't watch because, again, those shows are too ratchet. I think also, too, they feel more staged. Where the other shows, T.I. and Tiny's show is for sure more staged. But it's like they're the ghetto Huxtables, so it works. And it's a family reality show thing with kids and stuff. Housewives of Atlanta, though parts of it are set up, a lot of it actually is happening in the moment. And they talk about that. Like, they don't know oftentimes what they're walking into. And where Love and Hip Hop feels very like producers all purely just whispering in your ear what to say or how to say it. And then these over dramatic fights. So it feels less real and more like, I don't know if it's scripted or not. Like, that's what I get frustrated with Love and Hip Hop as a brand. But so I love the quasi semi-real, semi-scripted, but then mostly real type of reality shows, where the Love and Hip Hop brand, to me, it feels like a forced ratchetness. Because that's kind of I don't know, people want that. But
yeah, it's almost like spectacle level.
Very spectacle. And I don't know. I'm like, why don't I just watch a good drama?
Yeah.
At that point, why do I want to see, like Soulja Boy fighting with Ray J when it's like all stage? It just doesn't feel real to me. It feels like it's just Hollywood trying to like be introspective on itself, which is terrible.
Do you feel like just like a side note, I have like 5 questions coming up because I'm like, ooh, I want that. I don't know anything about this.
It's a whole world.
Yeah.
Especially these black reality shows. It's a whole world.
Tell me everything. So do you have like premiere parties at your house where you watch it with, do you watch this with people?
No.
Or is this like,
it is a guilty pleasure. It's one that I do not share with most people because of the associations of, you watch one of those shows, or, how could you condone that? Because as a music artist, I've primarily had a following built in Christian music, though I'm phasing out of a lot of that. That's where my following was. So for me, that was my brand, was to be spiritual and deep and, talk about Jesus all the time.
Yep.
And then to go, I love Jesus, but I also love Nene Leakes and Housewives of Atlanta. For people, especially because my audience wasn't gospel music, my audience was, white evangelical Christians.
Whoa.
So that's a whole other world even on top of it. Like you could be a gospel artist and say, I like Housewives of Atlanta. You could be a black gospel artist and black people understand that a bit. They'll go, yeah, because that's kind of our culture and where we come from and whatever. But if you do that with white evangelical Christians, they don't understand it. They still like, you listen to hip hop? Like, don't you think the lyrics are bad? You get questioned in that way. So for me, it's a very quiet, guilty pleasure that I only share with a few close friends. And occasionally, if a close friend comes to the house, I'll literally have it saved on DVR. I'm like, oh, you got to see this fight scene. You got to see the way she tells her off. Like, I do that. But, in recent days, I've become a little more public about it with a few friends on social media. But if I had the opportunity, I would live tweet every episode.
Whoa.
Like, I almost need to come up with an alternative account just to interact with all the black Twitter people out there talking Real Housewives of Atlanta, because I want to. So I see it and I want to like it. I want to respond, but I don't, because I'm stupid. But
no, you're not. Oh my gosh, I think this is a whole new opportunity that's opening up for you.
Oh yeah,
starting today.
A whole new alter ego.
You can just. I mean, I just say do it, live tweet it, say like deal with this. I'm evolving into this person, and
yeah, and I like it. And the hardest thing for me was last season. One of my favorite characters, who became one of my favorite characters, though Candy's my favorite character, and so is Nene. Nene left the show for a while, but my second favorite character was a woman named Phaedra Parks, who was like a Southern belle, but then she married this guy after while he was in prison, and then like for, I think it was money laundering or something, and he gets out of prison and ends up, they just put him back in prison for the same thing. But and she was like super Southern belle, kind of like black Southern belle, but very protective of herself. Her mom was a pastor, and so she kind of put on this facade a lot. But I understood why she had the facade, because it was like she was religious, but then she was ratchet, and she kind of like fluctuated with both. Long story short, she started a very vicious rumor last season about not only one of the cast members being a lesbian, but that one of the my favorite person who was her best friend, Candy, that Candy supposedly wanted to drug and rape Portia on the show. Yeah, and no one knew that the rumor came from her. Phaedra just passed on like, this is what I heard. And I heard it from a reliable source. Turns out, I guess, she was the one. And when it came out on the reunion, it was like, what? And no one understood, like everyone freaked out. Candy's crying and she doesn't do that a lot. It was so heavy. And then they like didn't ask her back on the show. And nobody wanted to work with her. Like it was that real.
Wow.
Like it was not like the stage thing.
Scripted.
It was like, how could you do that? Like it was such a violation to even the friendship that they had formerly and whatever. So now this season doesn't have my favorite character, who she gave the best reads, and she was the shadiest of them all. And, but
that sounds like total betrayal.
It was a total betrayal. I don't know why I went on this tangent, but
no, I love it. I'm totally into it. And this, I'm about to maybe go on a tangent, but
Fair.
Let's see where this takes us. What do you think that the show says about, I guess you're talking about like Black culture.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that it portrays Black culture in an honest way? And if so, like, you know, do you watch it and feel okay with the way that the rest of the world / America is seeing the culture? Or are there things that come up for you in terms of any sort of stereotypes or racism or anything that, you know, I'd be curious to hear your take on that.
So in a lot of ways, I think the nature of the format, which is reality, it's a genre. So it's a genre. And knowing that genre has excesses, like for instance, a soap opera has a type of excess of sentimentality or dramatism and acting style that, or like a telenovela as well, that breeds something that is outlandish, something that is over the top. So knowing that reality TV has become a type of genre, I don't put the same expectation on Housewives of Atlanta to represent Black culture to the world in its purest, truest way, especially because there's so many other representations out there in the world. Now, if that was the only representation, it would be like, this feels a little, you know what I'm saying? Like, why is this the only representation? But truthfully, I think, so with the excesses and the outlandish, foolish behavior and, delusional nature that just to be on a reality show, you kind of have to be a little delusional, or at least narcissistic and grandiose about your own personhood. With that being said, I do think in a lot of ways, Housewives of Atlanta represents a type of phenomenon in Black culture, particularly with Black women. And so for me, I have a mom, and this is why I actually love the Braxton Family Values, because it's Tony and all of her sisters. And she has, I think it's 5 of them total or 6 of them. And they're all their names start with a T: Tawanda, Trina, Tracy, whatever the rest of them, Tamar. But it reminds me of my mom and her sisters. So when I watch that show and their interactions, their fights, their frustrations, and even elements and parts of Housewives of Atlanta remind me of Black women I've met through the years. And it's a distinct type, like Nene Leakes is a distinct type of Black woman. And Phaedra is a type of Black woman. And Kenya is, and Portia and Cynthia, and all these people represent real persons that I've met in my life as a Black person that I've seen at the family reunions, and in their core essence as a personality. So in a lot of ways, I feel like it does represent us well, because we're not perfect people either. And we're not like, we can be very messy and petty. and I think the show kind of highlights the beautifulness of that and the humanity, as well as playing, like I said, into its framework and of it being a type of reality drama that, breeds a type of excess, which is, it's like Childish Gambino's last record, right? This is maybe a good parallel or not. Let's go down the rabbit hole.
Do it.
Is it Awaken the Dawn, right? So that's a throwback to a certain era of 70s and 80s type of R&B. Truthfully, I don't want to sit and listen to that type of R&B because there were way too many instrument solos. There was if you listen to that record, the excesses in which he takes musically can be kind of viewed modernly as like, why are you doing that? Like, this feels excessive. Like, you're doing all these like phrasings and musicality things that don't even really work in modern times, but you're paying tribute and honor to something that's a throwback, and the excesses kind of speak to themselves, like they kind of are necessary. Or people almost over singing, right? There's a type of over singing that is bad, and there's a type of over singing that actually pays honor and tribute to parts of our music history where people have done that. And so I view kind of Housewives of Atlanta very similarly, where I do think it represents an aspect, not the whole, not the complexity of Black culture, Black female identity. It's not, my mom doesn't behave in any of those levels, but I do see parts of her in them, a more toned down version. And actually, if my mom wasn't a Christian, she probably would be more ratchet. That's also a part of it too. My mom's super saved. But if you press her a little too much, you might see they know how to protect their families, and they know how to even be bullies at times, because the world has bullied them, and they have to be that for their families, for themselves, because of what they've experienced. And so I see that in Braxton Family Values. I see it in T.I. and Tiny. I see it in Housewives of Atlanta, or shows like that. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I love everything that you said. And I also am obsessed that you said your mom is super saved.
My mom is super saved. She's like, she can't sit here without expounding on a spiritual revelation she had. I'm like, Mom, can you just have a normal conversation? But she's really sweet. She's not judging you. She won't if you're not saved, she's not going to treat you weird or whatever. But she is that woman. But people come to her for that. She's worked on college campuses as a teacher and as someone who's helped write grants for programs for disadvantaged youth in Raleigh, North Carolina. And so a lot of kids come to her for spiritual guidance and, nourishment. So she's kind of that person for her community. And so that's my mom. So I think she always has to be super saved, because she's like a pillar in the community, and she's trying to, represent something for kids that don't have that as well.
Wow. She sounds very, very inspiring.
Oh, Elaine Matthews is a G in her own right.
Oh, hey. Well, next time she's out here, I'm taking her out for brunch.
Okay. Ooh. We got to get her to do mimosas, because she doesn't drink alcohol, but she did try mimosas once, and she goes, I can do this. Because she's super saved, She's like, I don't want to get people to think I'm I'm a lush. And I'm like, well, try more mimosas. You might do you well in your life.
Did she know there was alcohol in them?
She knew.
Okay.
She likes to teeter, She's like one of those what they call free Christians. She tries to be like, I can, but when you grow up thinking heaven or hell and that's the only way.
Right.
That's hard to get out of her psyche still.
Yeah.
Is heaven or hell, nothing else. And if you're not choosing heaven, you are going to hell. And heaven means holiness. And holiness means don't drink and don't go to movies. And my parents didn't have wedding rings when they got married, because jewelry was considered a sin in our denomination. Oh, yeah. They wore wedding watches.
Are you serious?
Very
I've
serious.
never even heard of this in my life.
Oh, yeah. Some of the strict holiness Black church traditions didn't endorse movies. Movies were like graven images. They were idols. My grandfather wouldn't let my dad and his siblings go see movies, but my grandmother would sneak and let them. Take them, when he wasn't around. And jewelry was considered, worldly. I think there's a passage in the Old Testament that talks about not wearing jewelry, or, it's considered gaudy and it's considered worldly possessions. And we don't give ourselves to worldly possessions. And so that was the sign of that was, your big hoop earrings would be like, women don't wear pants to church. My mother didn't start wearing pants to church until she was in her late 30s.
Wow.
That for her was freeing. When she wore pantsuit to church, it was like, I'm free.
Yeah.
I'm liberated.
Yeah.
And so
her Hillary moment.
Yeah. Exactly her Hillary moment. And so I don't know, that whole phenomenon is just that's how they grew up. And like I said, no.
Where did they grow
rings. Up? My mom grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and they were around during the Detroit riots. And I know we've talked about that and your history with that. And was it your grandmother as well? Drove you guys over there to see it.
Yeah, she got her kids in the car and was like, we're going to watch the riots. Oh, man.
I know.
I definitely have that blood in me.
Yeah, I totally could see that. Just like, we're going to get right in the middle of this conflict.
Oh, yeah.
Drive right into the danger. Detroit, my dad grew up in Western Pennsylvania, south of Pittsburgh, Oil City, Sharon, and my grandfather was, part of a big denomination, a Black denomination that had a campground south of Pittsburgh in West Middlesex, Pennsylvania. So my dad grew up there and then moved to Detroit probably in his 20s, and then met my mom at church, and then, They got married with their watches.
Wedding watches.
Wedding watches.
I legit have never heard of this, and I'm amazed. Was that like a phenomenon or a trend, or was it because I mean, like,
Yeah,
even with rings, it's always everybody, at weddings, they're always like, this ring has no beginning and no end. But then with the watch, it's like, we take this off and there's a beginning.
Totally. Yeah, I don't know if it was a total trend or if that was just their unique thing that they did, because the perception of the church community, like, we don't want to cause people to stumble.
Yeah.
We don't want people to look at us and think we're being worldly. And truthfully, years later, they got rings, after they realized that was silly. And I think they knew at the time it was silly. But, when you get married and it's your tribe, your tribe is everything. And, my grandfather was a holiness or hell preacher too, my dad's dad, and so I always forget how many decisions were made based on your community and the conditions of your community. And if we don't do this, then dad's going to be upset, or the church is going to be upset. And for my parents, church was their safety net as African Americans. And I think for a lot of Black Christians, church was their way of escape from the exploitation of capitalism in America, American racism. Like, church was your safety. It was the place of release, emotionally, spiritually, physically, the freedom of dance. And that was all their, and then as well, those were their tightest relationships. Like, they loved people outside of church, but they were not friends with people outside of church. Like, their close relationships, and even still to this day, for the most part, my parents' closest relationships are all the people they grew up with in church in Detroit. And they still, even though they don't even live in Detroit anymore, they're thinking about moving back, they still go up and, like, several times a year just to hang out with those people. Because church was, your church friends and your family were your friends. Like, my mom's best friends are her sisters, no one else. And then it's the church relationships that they've known for 40, 50 years. And so for that generation, that was community. And so for my parents, it was always hard, particularly my mom, it was hard for her to see me go outside of my race, go outside of, like, the bubble of having friends that weren't fully, not that they hated that I had friends that weren't Christian, they were cool with that, but to be so close to them, to feel very, like, that was like, well, you need people that believe exactly like you. And it's like, actually, I think our generation was very much like, no, we don't need to do that. And it doesn't affect my Christianity to have an atheist friend or have a friend who is LGBT or even LGBT and Christian or LGBT and not Christian. Like, it didn't, that we see that so differently now. But for my parents' generation, that's still like whoa, like,
a major trigger.
Yeah, and they felt safety in the group, and especially with everything that goes on in the American political system. And like I said, racism, it's like, you got to stay safe because.
Yeah. What was it like for your parents to have, because you were saying before that your kind of audience was like white Christians. So for them, that's a big separation from what their tribe looked like.
Yeah.
Were they fine with that, or did that bring things
They
up
didn't
for them?
even understand it until it's funny because I felt like my audience was mostly white. It started to trickle down into certain Black circles because the music that we were creating, just started getting out there. And so until they had Black people in their tribe who they knew and respected go, oh my God, we've heard your son's music. Like, or total strangers are, go like, oh, you're William Matthews' parents, which had never happened. It's always like, I'm their son. Mm-hmm. And because my grandfather was really well known in certain denominations, and my dad and mom, like, they're in this circle, this small religious circle across the country, they're very well known. And so they didn't understand it because they weren't plugged into white evangelical circles. So they didn't see it. They don't even check social media even. So like, it was like trying to explain to your mom, yeah, I'm going to Australia, I'm going to Europe, I'm going to da-da-da. Wait, why are you going there? What are you doing? You're singing something? And that's what you do for a living, huh? That was a hard concept until people that they knew started coming up and,
like validating.
And then they went, oh, he must be doing something. But that's because that's their world. And that's, so with having that audience, they still don't understand. Not because they're not smart, but they just don't understand because they're not in those circles. So they don't know to what level what I've done has reached, other than seeing that I've traveled internationally, or a certain song has done well on YouTube, or, or it gets on Spotify. Oh, that song has millions of plays. Like, oh, okay. You've done something.
I love that.
Congratulations. Son.
Yeah. Do you have, I know you have other siblings. Are any of them in the church or involved in anything that is in the same vein that you're talking about with your parents, or have you all kind of done something a little different?
I think we've done similar and different in different seasons as well. My sister, she doesn't do music, but she's very involved in a church. I think her and her husband are elders and deacons at a church, but it's not traditional. It's very loose and free. and they
don't have wedding watches.
They don't have wedding watches. No. Yeah, and their church is mostly white now too that they go to, so I think they're the only people of color that are considered elders or deacons at this church, which is I think a huge step for the church to have that and to have them in that place, and I think it speaks volumes to people of color in that church. But I think we're way more free. My siblings, I have two sisters, one 5 years older, one 5 years younger, and we live our lives very differently, but. And I think that confuses my parents too. We did not raise you guys like this. You have a drink every now and again. Like my dad's like, I got delivered from alcohol, and my son is drinking. That's hard for them.
He's doing a lot more than that, Daddy.
Only with Caroline and Jaden.
You know.
I know. I'm like, even the idea of like, oh, I was at a bar last night. Like my mom's like, you were at it. She instantly thinks the diviest of diviest bars with prostitutes and cocaine on the, like they don't even have a concept for like bar hopping or even pub culture. Like my parents have never gone to Europe. So I'm like, I try to explain pub culture to my mom, and she's gone to Africa, and they're like, oh, the Christians drink wine there. Like, I tried it, and I just don't think I can do that on the regular. That was like free for her. But when I explain pub culture, they're like, what? Like Christians drink like that? Like that's. I feel like I'm painting my parents in a terrible light. They're really good people and like
you're
nice
not.
people.
I don't think you are, but I think you bring up an interesting topic because I think growing up in a certain community that views other either activities or other types of people in a certain light, like puts them in a box and says this is what they're like.
Yeah.
For example, in India, being gay is still illegal, and so I was talking to a friend there. And he was going to New York. And so I thought, okay, this is important for me to let him talk to him about what that is, like what is gay. Cause I was like, I don't even know if he really knows anyone who is gay. And so I said, do you know what gay is? And he said, oh, isn't that people who wear all pink? And I was like, wow. And I mean,
not to laugh at him.
It's just wild. It blew my mind because I'm like, I'm not going to laugh at him, but I wanted to laugh because it brings up this like, oh my gosh, but that's literally what you get kind of told in certain circles. And if you don't experience it yourself, then you just take what you hear and then that's what your perception is. And so I think that's, like not to, take a totally different path, but also I just finished reading, a book by Lindy West. It's called Shrill. Okay. And she's like a stand-up comedian, and she wrote this book, and she talks all about like fat prejudice, and she talks all about these different things. And it's a great book. But then all of a sudden she just talks about her abortion and she describes it. And even that for me, I was like, wow, I have never it's so the way that she just explains it, because I think for us, a lot of Americans were so used to the really intense like abortion debates, and there's like all these, photos of people that they hold up, and it's just this horribly graphic thing. And she's just like, I took a pill and then this, and it's just, it's really intense to read it and be like, whoa, this is so raw and vulnerable. And yet it was not at all the picture that I had in my head of what that was like. And so I think it's just like when you say talking about a bar, talking about gay people, talking about even different races, just the stereotypes that we have of like, oh, a person from that country is like this. And that's where the stereotypes come from that can be so off. Like there's some truth in that. And there is somewhere there's a bar that has, there's sex workers and coke on the tables. That's probably in lots of bars, even in LA. Yeah. But it can be so dangerous to take kind of a seed of a stereotype and run it all the way through. And I think that that's something that can be more prevalent in like, I don't want to say religious circles, but kind
Well,
of just,
yeah. Well, I totally agree with you. It's human nature, right, to want to protect the purity of the group and to protect the innocence of whatever the group is. So whether it's heterosexuality, whether the group is Christianity, whether the group is, dare I even say, pro-life, pro-choice, which are groups, and not really expose each other to the arguments, or not even the arguments, but the lived experiences of people that are different. Because there are people that have had abortion experiences that have been traumatizing to them. And many of pro-life advocates are pro-life advocates because they've had traumatizing abortion experiences. And they don't want other people to experience that. But then there are many people on the pro-choice side who are actually like, actually, this wasn't a terrible experience. And in fact, I'm glad that I did that for these reasons in my life. And so I think, oh man, there are 7 billion plus people on the planet and rising. Why do we think there's only one way to live? Why do we not think there are 7 billion ways to live? And 7 billion ways to be human, 7 billion ways to interpret this thing called reality and existence. And if any of these religions, so to speak, are going to be beneficial to us, which I think, truthfully, for the human experience, they've been massively terrible, but massively beneficial on lots of levels. If it's going to be beneficial moving forward, I think what we have to see them as is on-ramps into understanding the other, and as on-ramps into the greater whole of existence, and choosing to see your brother or the stranger as your brother. And and I think at the mystical level, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity point to that reality on their spiritual mystical levels, not their dogma levels, but on the higher plane, meaning the trajectory that these texts are pointing us to. It's greater inclusion always, and to reconcile the greater the fragmented pieces of humanity and bring them together. And so I think whether it's whatever your tribe is, and in our day and time, you don't have to be religious to have kind of a religious dogma in a tribe.
So
you
true.
don't, because
So
because
true.
you know the fierceness in which some people defend pro-choice is like a type of dogma, religion, and pride. And the fierceness that some people defend pro-life is like that too. Or and dare I even say, it's more complex than this, but dare I even say the LGBT issue, people, it becomes so polarizing, and it's not to dehumanize anyone's life experience or say, well, we should. That would be like telling me, and I get how problematic that is. That'd be like telling me, well, you should just sit down with the white supremacists and really just hear them out and get along. Like, I'm not going to do that. Like, that's silly. So I get why people that are gay affirming or pro LGBT are like, well, I don't want to like sit there and have somebody tell me that my existence is not only wrong, but I'm damned to hell, or I'm going to tear apart the institution of marriage. Like, that's kind of crazy. But I do think, truthfully, every camp, right or wrong in the empirical sense, has a wound. Where's the hurt? Where do you hurt? What is the fear? Why do you fear the other? Why do you fear? We're all human. Like, where does it hurt? Where do you hurt? Who hurt you? Like, when I hear some of the political, and especially around these issues, and whether in the religious circles or non-religious circles, I just go, who hurt you? Or what are you afraid of? And maybe you weren't hurt, but somehow you became afraid of people that were different from you, or that people could have an experience in the world that you didn't have, or people could even have an experience in their body that you don't have. I ran into, it's funny, you told me to listen to Janet Mock's podcast. I subscribed to it, and then I ran into her the next day at a Solange concert, and I just was like, and I had seen some of her stuff, so I was familiar with her talk on transgenderism, which is still such a complex thing that I don't fully understand, and I've wanted to seek to understand. And so I've read articles. Vice News did a thing on trans youth that I loved, just to give me a grid for a starting place. Like, what is this? What is gender dysphoria? Like, whatever. But even choosing to even engage that conversation from a place of, I want to understand that maybe you have an experience in your body that is different than my own. Like, I don't wake up and feel like I'm not male. I've never had that experience. But that doesn't mean that there aren't people who legitimately have that experience, and not just an experience, that maybe there's a biological and chemical reality to it that is even something that I wouldn't understand. And that in and of itself is, I want to know the other. I want to understand the other and not discount it so quickly or say, oh, they're just making that up, or they're crazy or mentally ill, which a lot of, unfortunately, religious people do, or just people. I think if we had more compassion with the other and came together to understand, not to tear each other down, I think we would be able to navigate the times we live in so much better.
I love everything that you just said, and especially talking about the fear. There's always a root cause, whether it, if you dig at someone's belief system enough, even my own, if I dig at it enough, there's a reason why these beliefs that I have support me in kind of like living day to day. And all of a sudden, if we pull those out, I mean, even friends of mine who've gone through deconstruction and like, okay, I'm going to start challenging everything I believe. I mean, it kind of stops their life for a while.
It does.
You can't just keep going if you're pulling at your beliefs or at least like knocking at them to see which ones fall over. Everything changes. Your whole life shifts, your friendships shift. And so I think for a lot of people, it's easier to ignore the fact that there might be a few like dead roots in their kind of house, because if you knock on them, it changes everything. And that's even scarier than just kind of pretending that you can just keep going without kind of like addressing it. So
exactly. And I think we're all unhealed people. I think we grow up in a world that traumatizes us in little ways or big ways. And we just often just roll and keep rolling without addressing those things. And many of those hurts and wounds, like you said, inform our belief systems, not even our cognitive belief systems, but our unconscious belief systems. So, even racism kind of points to that. Like you might have an unconscious bias, prejudice, or racial discriminatory behavior, but you don't even see it as that because it's more unconscious for you. But there's a wound there. There's a trauma. There's a lie you believed early on about the other. And I think the more we can deconstruct those things, I think, and our inability to deconstruct, I think is what keeps us in antagonizing relationships with other groups of people, because we're unwilling to look at ourselves. And that's why I love the Bible, because the Bible says, take the, like, why are you calling out the speck in your brother's eye when you got the big lodge?
Yeah.
Like, it's like that little baby on Instagram, stay in your lane. Or like, mind your business, worry about yourself. Worry about yourself. Like, don't spend your energy overly critiquing and criticizing the other. Do that on yourself and to be better and to be more whole and full versus, telling them why they don't have God in their life or why they're not good enough.
I had a brainwave a couple months ago.
Oh, okay.
And
Do you not have those moment by moment, atom by like millisecond by millisecond?
Well, hopefully I do. But I had a larger than normal one.
Okay, all right.
And I went and raced to GoDaddy and bought theotherismybrother.com.
Woo!
So someday I have to do something with it. But I was like, it was one of those days where I was like, oh, come on. Yeah. Why can't we see this in each other? Why can't we do something with this?
That's why me and Lisa Gungor wrote, we have this song called Free, and shameless plug, it's on Spotify, look up Gungor Free. Also have a version of it coming on my album next year. I don't know when this is releasing, but in 2018. And we wrote the lyric about Syrian refugees and police brutality, but we wrote this lyric, in these desperate times, love will hold us here, love will join our hands, teach us to have no fear. So we lay our hate down to wash their feet. When we see our brother, we'll all be free.
It's the best song ever.
Thanks.
I love it so much. It's such a beautiful song. And seeing you guys play it together live was like a year highlight for sure. It's like it's like very healing. And especially when there is so much weird, crazy stuff going on, it's like focusing on, okay, what's the point and what are we all doing and what's our shared intention, and that stuff is very healing. So I really love it. I love it. Definitely no shame in the plug. Go listen to it. It's the best.
I know we're trying to talk about being off-brand. I was being on-brand there
for a moment. You know, girl. So last question, circling all the way back to what brought us here, which is the Housewives of Atlanta, and also
great
going
show.
all the way
Season 10 coming soon. I saw the trailer and geeked.
Okay, now I want to watch it with you.
Oh, it is.
I'm gonna bring the whiskey.
I'll find when it premieres. But that's
Okay.
yeah. It's I'll show you the trailer after this. You'll be like, oh, I need to watch the show.
Well, and I haven't seen any of it. So since we've been talking about all the stuff with The Other, and is there any diversity shown in the show, and or are there themes that you feel like we can learn from that are either in like a don't do this or do this that are portrayed in the show?
So the show is, I think the first number of years, the show, there was a housewife that is white, Kim Zolciak. She eventually left the show. She literally walked off the show one day and never came back for years. Thankfully, she's returning this season after like being gone for like 3 or 4 years. Like she was done. She literally pulled off the thing, was like, I am done with this. I'm over it. Get me off this. Take the camera off of me. And she legitimately didn't show back up for 3.5 years until this new season. And she's only partially showing up. So yeah, there was a white character, which that interaction was always, those interaction with a group of black women and one white woman was always really interesting to have. After that, there really wasn't much diversity on the show, but truthfully, that's kind of Atlanta. Atlanta is a very segregated city, and I don't mean that in a bad way necessarily. I mean it in a more of it's a primarily black city, and so that world is just like when I go visit my family in Atlanta, I'm pretty much only seeing black people in the whole city whenever I'm driving around, or it's like 1 in 10 white or something.
Yeah, one of my actress friends just moved there from LA, and it's been so funny to hear her because she'll be like, sometimes I just get jobs because the role it calls for a white person, and I'm the only one that showed up for it. And
it's such a. I mean, I remember once. This is years ago because I was living in Northern California with all white people, basically a small town with 90,000 people. That was pretty much all white, 1% African American. And then I was traveling with all white people all the time. So I just lived in a very white world for most of my 20s, I realized. So then I remember once during that time, I went to Atlanta and got on the MARTA, which is the tram system. And there was like a small group of white people sitting like close clustered together. And it was like all black people and they all were kind of sitting there. And I went and sat next to the white people. I was like, I haven't been in like an all black city in a long time. Like, I don't know if I can adjust. Like, it was funny. I know it's so funny to say. This is like probably 8 years ago. But even for me, it made me wake up and go, why do you feel more comfortable? You're black. Why do you feel you grew up with all like black family? You went to a black church. You even went to schools that were all black. Why do you not feel comfortable with black people right now? Oh man, that's a whole nother conversation. But
I love it.
It's a own personal journey that I've had to walk through and still walk through. But so that's Atlanta. And so with the show, I think the show really reflects black celebrity culture in Atlanta and just that world very well. So, and also I think that's just good because that's the world. Like there's no black people on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills because that's just not even the culture in Beverly Hills. Though there are black people in Beverly Hills, it's just not even prominent on any level. Now, if they did, Real Housewives of Baldwin Hills, that's where the black celebrities live, right? That would be you would even see that would be a whole different, dynamic. But Bravo's not going to do a series like that. But anyway, so I think the show represents Atlanta really well, and it's not fully, of course, but it represents a part of Atlanta really well. And I think if there's anything to learn from it, it's learn to speak your mind, learn to be yourself, learn to, one of the rules on the show, which I love, but I find this rule to be very prominent in black culture. No one likes to be fake. No one wants to be fake. So if there's like weird tension in the group or, everyone's like, put it on the table, keep it 100. Like, y'all not talking. Why? Like, what's going on? But I actually found that growing up, black people are a bit more straightforward in that way, especially relationally, or they'll never feel the pressure to like you in a moment if they don't like you. Where in most of my experience with white culture, it's very much like everyone dances around each other and it's like, we're all nice and we're just trying to all stay polite, but there's like all this enormous tension. And I'm like, how do y'all live like this? Dear God.
I don't know.
Like, yeah, it's, it's a whole dynamic that I just go, y'all just really like to sit with some tension and just like, but you even kind of see that even on the Bravo shows that feature all white cast, like and they're exaggerated too and they get into fights, but it's my white friends are like, oh, I can't watch Atlanta, it's too black, it's too like in your face, and I'm going, but that's black people, we're just like that in general. Yes, the show's outlandish for sure, so it's hyped, but that's just who we are. And so If there's anything to learn from it, it's call shit out when you see it. Call it fake when it's fake. And you don't have to engage with it if it is. And that's fine. I don't have to be your friend. You don't have to be my friend. I can even respect you and not have to be your friend.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I think that it's really hard for people, especially with, there's kind of this pressure of like, oh, you have to be nice or it has to look this way, which just kind of breeds fakeness because like you said, I can respect you and not want to be your friend. And I actually have one person in my life that I have that with. And it took us probably 2 years of kind of like this sort of tension and tug of war of like, our friendship isn't quite jiving. And like, maybe I actually don't want to be your friend at all. And then we took like 4 months without talking. And then we had this amazing conversation of like, what if we just respect each other and just leave it at that? And now we text each other like once every 3 months, just like thinking of you today and sending love. We don't get together and sit and chat and have long glasses of wine together, but there's so much just respect. And I think that is so possible.
It's so possible.
It's so possible. And I don't have to absolutely want to be a part of every single day of this person's life or like hang out and share the same jokes. And, you know, maybe their personality rubs me the wrong way and vice versa, because let's be honest, my personality is a little bit stronger than a glass of water. And
that's an understatement of the year. But it's beautiful, though. And anyone that can't handle you, though, they just can't hang.
Well.
That's real. Very real. If you can't handle Caroline, then you just can't hang with real people. That's what I say.
Thank you.
It's true.
Well, it's so freeing to just be like, respect, love, but not right next to me.
Yeah.
And that's okay, though, because the world is huge and there's enough space for us not all to be in the same room at the same time. You can be in a different state, a different city, or even just a different building and be like, love,
respect, and even could point out areas of disagreement where, like, oh, I don't like this, I don't care, like, or that way of thinking, whether it's on social media or whatever, and still go, I still can respect and love you in your context, because we all live in our context. And our lived experiences and our shared experiences. And your context might be something I don't have a grid for or understand. And that's fine. And I don't even have to like it personally. Or it rubs, like you said, rubs me the wrong way. Their personality, which really comes out of a lived experience. Somebody's personality comes out of that. So that's fine. But I can respect you and love you and celebrate you from afar without having to agree with you on everything. But I can love you enough to give you that space. And love you enough and love myself enough to know I don't have to interact with that space, because I have a lot of friends that are pro-life, and I love that. And I have a lot of friends that are pro-choice, and I love that too. And I sit somewhere in the middle in a lot of ways, but I can respect your context. So sometimes I've been wrong when I've judged my where I've judged them to be like, you have to think like me. And I'm like, no, actually they're coming out of a context, and maybe they're even coming from a trauma. I have pro-life friends that are like, my mom considered an abortion. If she did, I wouldn't be here. So that's why I'm a pro-life advocate, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her choice to do that. And I think there are other kids that would be here without, and I could see that. Doesn't mean that it takes away from the legitimate arguments that pro-choice people have about autonomy of body and freedom of choice, which is funny because that's a very conservative ideal, and also that the government shouldn't decide what you do with your body. And then where does life actually begin? As a fetus, a person, like, and all those complex wrestlings and questions, and these two lives are conflicting with each other, and who wins out, it's all so valid, even on the progressive left side as well. And so, again, I agree with you. I can respect that bubble and know that your context is your context, and I can come in and out, and I don't have to be best friends with you. I just don't. I can be myself, and you can be yourself. And truthfully, hopefully, I think as we learn to live with each other and the rest of humanity, I think we'll always just slowly come closer together. That we'll kind of find that beautiful middle, maybe. I don't know if it's a middle necessarily. I don't know. But we'll find that beautiful harmony with the tensions. And I think we won't find ourselves in perpetual culture wars like we do.
Oh, I hope so. I'm ready. I'm ready. Next
Hallelujah.
level.
Praise Jesus. Won't he do it? Get us there, Lord. I'm sorry.
I love you.
Love you too.
stick around for part 2 of this discussion, where we'll dive into the online portion of social media realities. This episode of Out of Line was produced by me, Caroline. All sound editing, engineering, and original music composition by Jaden Lee. And a big thank you to Cat Footwear for working with Out of Line this season. Hit subscribe to get the next episode on your mobile device when it drops next week. And if you love what you heard, please whip out a review, will ya?